Ahead of pay-per-view event here in Las Vegas this weekend, we're speaking with UFC CEO Dana White. Dana, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So this is UFC 310, and I know you joined UFC 30 in 2001. My question for you is how close is the reality now to what you envisioned UFC could be back in 2001?
Well, your reality keeps getting pushed further and further and further as your business grows. But people ask me this all the time. Did you ever envision this? Did you ever think that it would be this big? And the answer is always yes. We completely believed in this thing when we bought it. The question is the timing right? And the answer to that question is the timing couldn't have been more perfect. With the decline of boxing, technology, growing as fast as it did, streaming, the list goes on and on. And the reason I said that what you pictured happening just keeps getting pushed further and further, because we believed that this would work all over the world, and it has. And we are the biggest pay-per-view provider in the world. We're in over 1 billion homes worldwide on some form of television. But when you look at what the ceiling for this business is, there's 8 billion people in the world. So I believe that if I put the right fight on in the right place with the right guys, you could get 8 billion people to watch a fight, I believe.
Let's go back even before the UFC. Tell me a little bit about, I want to know what drew you to combat sports. I know you were a boxer yourself, but growing up in Massachusetts, I guess how did that make you into the person that you were before you started joining the UFC?
Well, I've been very lucky because I lived in Massachusetts until 5th grade. Then we moved here to Las Vegas. And then when I was 17, I went back to Boston. So I sort of bounced back and forth between the West Coast and the East Coast, and I got the best of both worlds. Got to meet a lot of different people, and obviously, my roots in boxing started in South Boston, Massachusetts. Yet, there were a lot of opportunities and things that I learned here in Las Vegas that helped me, shape me to what I would end up becoming.
Well, one thing that I've always been interested in, I heard you talk about this before, is your relationship to risk. And obviously you can't get from where you were, a working class guy, no college degree, to now CEO of a multi-billion-dollar organization without taking some risk. But what fascinates me is now you have achieved some success, some status, some money, but you still seem to embrace risk in how you operate the business.
Yeah, I love risk. I love taking what people would call chances. I like taking opportunities. I swear to God, this often, right where we're sitting right now. So this is my bar that is connected to my office. And in this room every day, it's like Shark Tank in here. Literally, people come in here every single day, multiple meetings a day, pitching me on their business and asking me to help them or be a part of it. I mean, it's weird how my life has sort of morphed into that whole thing. But I actually love sitting down and listening to young potential entrepreneurs telling me what their vision for their company is, and whether they're looking to raise money or they're looking to, have me help them as far as marketing or whatever it might be. I love risk, and I love listening to other people who are willing to take chances.
It seems the first risk was getting into the UFC business, right? At the time, obviously, mid-90s, John McCain's famous for calling human cockfighting, and then MMA was banned in 36 states, and UFC itself on the brink of bankruptcy. And yet, you saw some opportunity in it to bring it to the Fertittas, and then eventually they bought it in 2001. What opportunity did you see, or what were you seeing that thought that was a risk to take?
Me and the Fertitta brothers started doing jiu-jitsu together, and we fell in love with it. We became, obsessed with it, training 3-4 days a week. And then we started to meet some of the UFC fighters. And we were like, wow, these guys are really good guys. They're smart. This is an exciting sport. And it was one of the, what if we clean this thing up, really turn it into a real sport? Lorenzo Fertitta came from the regulating background. So he really understood regulation, was very well respected by other regulators. So, we love fighting. And my philosophy has always been fighting is in our DNA as human beings. No matter what color we are, what country we come from, what language we speak, we like fighting. you know? And one of the most fascinating things about fighting is when you have somebody that looks like you, talks like you, and comes from where you come from, and they're looked at as the baddest human being on earth, your people surround you and support you. Whether it's Manny Pacquiao, you know, Conor McGregor, you know, when you take all these different people from around the world, Alex Pereira from Brazil, George St. Pierre from Canada, it's very cultural. And when you get these guys who are looked at as the best in the world and they're taking on guys from other countries that are looked at as the best in the world, there's nothing more exciting and there's nothing bigger. And what we did is we figured out a way to package the whole thing professionally, make it a professional sport, yet make it really exciting and entertaining. That's why I still to this day am one of the only, probably the only sport that controls all my production. I put on all the production. I don't let any of the networks handle my production.
In those early years, though, I think I read somewhere that at one point you guys were like $44 million in debt, right? Was there ever a point where you thought about cutting bait, or you said, we tried this and it didn't work out? Yeah.
So one day I was at the office and Lorenzo called me and he's like, I can't keep doing this. Me and my brother can't keep funding this thing. It's getting bad. So I need you to go out and see what you could sell this thing for. So I thought it was over. I started making phone calls that day, and at the end of the day, I called him back and I said, 7 or 8 million. Could probably get 7 or 8 million for this thing, in my opinion. And he's like, all right. He said, I'll call you tomorrow. And then I thought it was over. And the next day I'm driving to work and Lorenzo calls me, and this is literally, quote, what he said: fuck it. Let's keep going.
Do you remember when that was?
No.
Okay.
But I remember it like it was yesterday. I don't remember what it was, but I remember it like it was yesterday. And then, we knew we had to get on television. We believed that if we could get this thing on TV, people would see it and people would love it. But at the time, they wouldn't even allow it on pay-per-view. So think about this. As a grown man, you didn't have the option to buy this thing on pay-per-view. Porn was on pay-per-view, but UFC was not allowed. So when you talk about like guerrilla stuff, I mean, we did so much guerrilla marketing at the time and things that were, completely unconventional. The guy that ran in-demand pay-per-view, his name was Marshall Zelaznik. He wouldn't even take a meeting with us. So they used to have their big cable TV convention in Century City. And I booked a hotel room there, got up in the morning, went down to where all the conferences were, found out what meeting he was in, and waited for him outside the door. And when he came out, I said, Marshall, Dana White from the UFC. You could tell too, when I walked up to him, he was like, how the hell did this guy find me? So I started telling him, we created this reality show. It's designed to sell pay-per-views. It'll be big for both of our businesses. And he hated it, but we ended up working it out. We did a deal with them. Marshall Zelaznik ended up working for the UFC. So that guy ended up being one of our employees. But those are the type of guerrilla things that we did back in the day that when you're grinding and nobody wants your product and nobody wants to hear about it, you got to sort of go out and then, force them to take it.
When I think about like a turning point for that, The Ultimate Fighter season 1 comes to mind. But from what I've heard, speaking of risk, you guys had to pay the production cost for that, and I read somewhere there was like $10 million, and that ended up being a huge hit. How did that transform the business?
So we were talking to all the different networks. None of them liked it. Everybody was terrified of this thing. And Hollywood's pretty much that way. Hollywood is more of a, nobody's first and nobody's popping out. They're sort of a Me Too crowd. When something is big, and it, same as us. Once we did it, then all these other leagues started popping up behind us. It's like The Voice and American Idol, and you know what I mean? They do all the same shit.
I was thinking about, reality TV and sports now. Formula One, Drive to Survive, the NBA has one, the NFL has one, tennis has one, golf has one. But in 2005, that was a crazy concept.
So true.
Yeah.
And we believed that because reality television was so big at the time, it was like our Trojan horse to get on TV, with fighting without it actually being fighting. And so we were pitching all the networks. Nobody liked it. So this new network popped up called Spike TV, and they were labeled the network for men. I mean, if we don't fit there, where do we fit? So we go and meet with these guys, and they don't like the idea. They couldn't get out of the room fast enough with us. They were headed to a Dodgers game, and it was going to cost like $10 million to produce the show. And the Fertitta brothers said, what if we put up the 10 million? They liked that idea a lot better. So we ended up doing the deal. And when you look back on stuff like that, and for other entrepreneurs that are out there, when you have to put up the money at the time for yourself, it's hard and it seems whatever, but guess what ended up happening? We put up the money, so we owned 100% of everything. We owned everything, which ended up being a much better deal for us in the long run.
Yeah, it was. I think I saw somewhere something like tripled your guys' revenue, like 2005 to 2006. Like the business kind of took off from there.
Took off, and it wasn't like this. It was like a rocket ship.
Yeah, it seems like in the years after that, you guys went into branded magazines and video games and action figures and trading cards, and I guess the value of the brand increased. And I was thinking about how
you want to talk about people not believing in the UFC. So think about this: when we bought this company for $2 million, we literally bought an old wooden octagon. We had the 3 letters, the UFC, and like 12, 15 contracts, right? The old owner had sold everything, all the ancillary stuff away to Lionsgate, right? So Lionsgate owned everything, the merchandise, the video games, the DVDs, all that stuff. So we flew out to Lionsgate and they sold us the rights back. And I want to say it was like $3 million that was going to be paid over the next several years. So when we left, they were probably cracking up laughing, going, wow, this is going to look great on our books over the next 3 years. Now that those rights are worth, hundreds of millions to billions of dollars. So when you talk about not believing, they own the rights to this thing. They never thought this was going to work.
Well, and I guess to my point, a key differentiator from UFC to something like boxing is that you guys, I guess the brand kind of came up with it, and there was maybe less reliance on stars. Not that you guys didn't have stars, but if they retired and moved on or lost their luster, the sport, I guess, and UFC kind of came up as a brand. I guess, like, how important was that for you?
Well, what's never been done, that's what we did, what we set out to do. What's never been done before is a league has never been created for fighting, right? So if you think about anything, any type of business where trillions of dollars have been generated in revenue. If you look at boxing, right? Trillions of dollars. And at the end of the day, there's nothing there. Every fight, I say this all the time, is like a going out of business sale. They'll jump in, put on a fight, grab as much money as they can and take off until they make another fight. We always set out to build a brand and a league. It's like our fans trust us so much and know that we will deliver a good product that when we announce a fight, tickets almost sell out before we even announce who the main event is because they know that we're going to deliver. And when fights fall off on the card, nobody freaks out and panics and starts getting rid of their tickets because they know we're going to bring something that was as good or even better than the original fight. So we've built a brand in fighting that people trust, which was very important to me from the get-go, because being a huge boxing fan, every time I would stay home on a Saturday night and watch a fight, and I would turn the TV off, I'd go, they got me again. They sucked me in for, $60, $70, and that fight sucked. And I wanted to make sure that when we built the UFC brand, that our fans were, trusted us and trusted the brand.
Well, to that point, I mean, not to jump ahead too much, but from $2 million in a wooden octagon to 2016, when Fertitta sold to WME-IMG Endeavor for $4 billion, I guess, like, why was that the next move to make for the company? And then also, did you ever consider sailing off into the sunset? Why did you decide to stay on?
Yeah, it was a weird time for me. I didn't want to sell. Lorenzo did. And it was at the point where, Lorenzo finally had to sit me down and said, you're my best friend. I'm done. I want to move on. Be happy for me, okay? And, once he put it to me that way, I understood it better, I guess I would say. But yeah, I wasn't ready to sell. I'm not done now. I mean, I love to do this. I wasn't sure how it was going to be after the sale. And, what I kept saying to him and Frank was, don't sell this to somebody that, A, I'm going to be miserable and not want to work with these people, or B, end up leaving because of whatever the reason is. So, there were two guys at the time, David Levy, who was from Turner, whom I always liked and respected, and then Ari, who at the time was our agent. So I was like, one of these two guys, I can work with and be happy and whatever. And it ended up being Ari, and sitting right here, right now, after, we're coming up on 10 years, it couldn't be better.
How do you think about your role now? Because obviously it's very different than being a CEO of, some other company, right? You're making the matches, you're kind of the fight promoter, you're the face of UFC. I think a lot of people just assume that you're the owner, kind of like a Vince McMahon type, right? Just because you're so synonymous with UFC. But how do you think of your role now for the company?
I love it. I mean, it hasn't changed much. I do exactly what I always did, but everything has gotten better. I think that my relationship with my team has gotten stronger over the last however many years. We have people here that have worked here for 20 years, and the turnover rate here is nil. A couple people will leave here and there because they maybe got a better opportunity. But I love coming to this. The campus here is incredible. The people that I work with every day I love, and we just continue to kick ass, and I love this business, love this sport, and love this company.
The other big moment I have to ask you about, because it's that next big risk moment, is 2020 with the pandemic. You guys were the first sporting event to come back, and for a while the only sporting event. What I'm curious about is, do you see that as a big business opportunity for you guys? Or what went into that decision and how risky was it?
No, there's a lot of different layers to that.
Okay.
First and foremost, now, after we had sold, now we're a big, huge company. We're part of we're under the umbrella of in a portfolio of many other companies. And you know how that works. As you start leading into bad times, you start looking at cutting people, laying people off, and it's always about the bottom line when you're in a business like that. That's not the way that I'm wired. So it's not about the bottom line for me, it's about people. I will always pick people over money. And at that time, the thing that pissed me off was what's going on. I own an arena right next door here, right? So in my hometown, I don't need to pack the arena or do any of that. I need a couple fighters, I need some commission guys, and I need some production people. And we can beam this thing out all over the world. We had social distancing and masks and all the stuff that was going on during that time, and we would have abided by whatever the standards and rules were. And the governor here still wouldn't let me do it. So my thing was this: I never understood COVID. It never made sense to me. I can go in a crowded restaurant and eat and take my mask off, and I can put it back on after I'm done eating and walk out. And so there were a lot of things like that didn't make sense to me, number one. Number two, my employees and my fighters. And number three, I'm not a go hide in my house kind of guy. It's not how. If this is what's going to happen to all of us, this is how it ends. It's not going to end with me hiding in my house. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. So that was sort of my mindset going through COVID. I said, all I need, I can set up on an island. If there's some infrastructure there where I can actually do production, I just need an island or somewhere where I can put on fights. Ended up working out a deal in Florida, and ended up working out a deal in Abu Dhabi. We ran our business through COVID. Everybody got paid. We honored every contract, and our business grew something crazy like 77% through COVID.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to ask, because obviously that was a moment where I think in a lot of circles that showed some alignment with a conservative political movement that was anti these COVID restrictions. Whether you were thinking about that as, again, like a business move, or whether there's some deeper, moral stance being taken that,
I think it was a combination of everything. Like I said, there were a lot of different layers to that. Well, let me tell you this, right? The UFC, as a human being, the UFC is this rocket ship of success, right? Every year, we have these great Christmas parties. We got one coming up here in the next week. And I stand up on stage and tell my people how much I care about them and how much I love them, right? And it's a fact. And all of a sudden, we roll into the scariest time in my lifetime. I'm 55, scariest time in my lifetime. And I'm going to tell all these people that have helped me build this business, I know this is horrible and I don't know what the future holds, but I got to lay, 37% of you off. Good luck, everybody. I hope you make it. I hope you all make it through. That's never going to happen here, ever, under any circumstances. When you lead your family, your business, whatever it may be, you figure out solutions to problems and you take care of everybody, not just yourself. Because let me tell you what, I got a pretty nice house. I could have held up in my house for as long as it took. That's just not me. That's not who I am. And I'm never going to do that, no matter what anybody tries to tell me. We're going to try to this is America. We're going to figure out solutions to problems, and we're going to take care of other Americans. And you're going to take care of your people that have been with you taking care. You know how many people missed their kid's first step, plays, practices, games to help build the UFC? And then COVID hits, and I'm going to lay 38% of them off? That's never going to happen, ever.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I have a similar sort of question with your relationship with Donald Trump, right? Because he was an early supporter of UFC, and there was kind of that loyalty built then that it has persisted through the years. It's been a friendly place for him to come to after he left office in 2021 and in 2023, and gotten applause and that sort of thing. But like, I guess how much of it is the personal relationship that you have with him, and how much is, I guess, sort of an alignment of core audiences, if you will, like a sort of a symbiotic
But
relationship?
we didn't know that. We didn't know that at the time. When everybody was going after him and, doing what they were doing to him, I've known this guy for a long time. He's a good man, and I like him very much. His family are good people. And he asked me to support him. Think about this. So forget about all the other stuff in the middle. In the early days of the UFC, this thing had such a bad stigma attached to it. We were just talking about, could we even get it on pay-per-view, let alone TV? Trump brand here, UFC brand here. He got it, he liked it, he saw it, and he said, come to Taj Mahal, we'll do the events. We did 2 events. He showed up for the first one, stayed till the last, and after that, he's doing Donald Trump stuff, and I'm doing my UFC stuff. Every good thing that ever happened to me in my career, this guy would reach out and say, congratulations, I always knew you were going to make it. This, that. All these things that just make you a good human being. That's who Donald Trump was. And Donald Trump has been a good friend to me. So
didn't he try to launch his own mixed martial arts promotion at one point? Yeah.
And you know what, that's funny, because what happened was, I want to say it was TMZ was interviewing me one time, and they're like, Donald Trump's about to go head to head with you. What do you have to say about that? I said, I'll never say anything bad about Donald Trump. Donald Trump was good to us, but it's a testament to how much he likes fighting and what he saw in the UFC back in those days. You're the only guy that's ever asked me that too.
About
all
his
the Trump
promotion?
questions I've ever been answered, you're the only guy that's ever said that to me. And you're damn right. That's exactly right.
Did you feel, I don't know, like
No.
threatened by it or anything?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
Okay.
And it's the exact opposite. They were trying to get me to say something bad about him.
Sure.
And, I said I never will. This guy was there in the beginning. He's always been a good friend to me. And then when he hit me in 2015 and said, would you speak at the Republican convention for me? He started out with, if you don't want to do it, I completely understand. And I'm like, and everybody told me not to do it. Everybody said, don't get involved in this, and he's never going to win. It's not worth it. I said, nah, this guy's been a good guy to me. I'll do it. And then when I spoke in 15, our relationship became that's when we really started to become really good friends.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm less interested in what are Dana White's politics. I mean, I've heard you say that you're not interested in it very much at all. But you mentioned you didn't know it at the time, but this sort of alignment between what UFC has always stood for and its fans, this sort of anti-establishment, individual, masculine, aggressive, fight for what you believe in sort of thing, seems
True.
almost inextricable with I guess, like his supporters and.
But with everybody, not just hey, right, conservative, Donald Trump stuff, make America great again, and all this stuff. During all the madness that was going on at that time, we had a fighter named Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley, I didn't put Black Lives Matter anywhere or any of the stuff that was going on, all that stuff, but Tyron Woodley came out at a press conference, and every question that was asked him, his response was Black Lives Matter. He's a grown-ass man who has his own beliefs and what he wanted to stand for. Then we have, Jewish fighters. We have Russian fighters. The world is an ugly place, and there's conflicts going on all around the world all the time. We don't tell grown men and women what to do, what to say, what to believe in. Never once through my whole Trump thing have I ever told any of my employees, not only do I tell my employees who to vote for, we don't even go, hey guys, it's November, get out there and vote. You're all grown men and women. Mm-hmm. If you want to go vote, go vote. If you don't want to vote, don't vote. When the COVID thing happened, we had the vaccine, right? We had, if you wanted it, you could take it. If you didn't have to take it. It was not mandatory here at the UFC for employees or fighters to be vaccinated. But if you wanted it, we'd help you get it. Mm-hmm. Whichever one you wanted to take, we'd help you get it. We don't tell grown men and women what to do. This is a free country, and you can do whatever you want to do.
Sure. It must be, kind of like MAGA aside, it must be kind of surreal given where you've come from that now, the President of the United States, like I was listening to a podcast you did in like 2015, and it was after the Ronda Rousey Holly Holm fight, and it was like Trump had tweeted about the fight, and it was like, how crazy is it that a presidential candidate is tweeting about UFC, right? 10 years later, you're maybe not in the inner circle, but you're in the circle and you're speaking at his victory rally. That must be kind of a wild sensation, no?
Yeah, well, it's the relationship that he and I have built over the last, I guess you could call it, really, our relationship has become very strong in the last 10 years, you know what I mean? And yeah, he is a very, very good friend of mine. When I was flying to Italy for my vacation, my wife woke me up and said they shot him. I was sick to my stomach. I thought he was dead when she said that, because she didn't know either. She just had read it on her phone. So I started blowing his family up, and they hit me right back and said, he's at the hospital. We don't know a lot either, but we know he's okay. And and then I called him as soon as I landed, and he answered the phone, and he was already home. And he was like, yeah, they didn't get me. He is the most resilient, badass. He's one of the toughest guys I've ever met. And that iconic picture of him now that will go down in history forever, of how he reacted to being shot at 7 times and being hit in the ear. It's just, you can't be more presidential than that. It's incredible.
Let's end with Power Slap. So I wanted to ask you about this because, and you've mentioned this before, but it is such a similar position to what people were saying about UFC in its beginning, that it's barbaric, that it's it's only legally sanctioned in one state.
Not a sport. This is gross. This should never happen.
But you mentioned earlier that there's kind of this base instinct of people love to fight. So you see a growth potential there. Why is that?
And I can tell you this: when everybody's saying how horrible it is and this and that and everything else, you got something good. You got it. And Power Slap is exactly like the UFC. Except the fact that it grew much quicker than UFC did. We have more sponsors now for Power Slap than we had 10 years into the UFC. So, and it's fun. The live event is like the UFC. It's like when you go to a UFC live event, you don't walk out of one of those and go, yeah, I never want to see one of these again. It's the same thing with Power Slap. The live event is even better than what you see on television. And it's actually been fun for me, because it's like, almost like if you built this incredible business, then you had the chance to go back and do it all again, and it's almost identically the same. It's what I'm getting right now with Power Slap. So it's been really fun for me.
I assume, you probably have a bigger stake in it or more invested in it. Whether that part of the motivation was, hey, I can kind of like build something of my own here from scratch.
Well, the beautiful thing is it's like the Spike TV story that I told you. So when you go out and you're looking, and for me to be able to do this, I can't just go start some business that I want to start. I run the UFC, right? I get paid a lot of money to run the UFC. So, I asked everybody, I said, hey, listen, I want to do this. Do you guys want a piece? You want to come in and whatever? Yeah, you can do it, but we'll take a small piece.
And you kept the rest.
I'm okay with it. It all worked out. So
fair enough. Fair enough. Looking ahead to 2025, obviously the biggest thing from a business perspective is the media rights deal that you guys have coming up. And I know that accounts for something like 60% of UFC's revenue. So it's a really big deal for the business. How much, is there pressure that you feel right now as negotiations are going down to make sure that it turns out well, considering the effect that it will have on the business?
I literally never feel pressure.
Okay.
I never feel pressure. This whole thing's going to play out the way that it's going to play out. We know what we can deliver and what we bring to the table. And talking about pressure, I have these weird moments like right before an event. Like you were here. You were one of the very few people who got to see what the Sphere was going to be like. And you were one of the very few people who knew the concept. Because not only did people not know what the hell was going to go on at the Sphere, they didn't even know what the concept was or what it was going to be. And I wouldn't even let one image go out. My team was not allowed to put out even an image of what was going to happen at the Sphere. You were one of the very few people that saw. So as I take on these big, crazy, let's be first things, there's some moments where you're, and it's always like right before the event that I'm like, here we go. And it's a weird thing for me because it should be a moment that I'm enjoying. We put all this money and time and energy and work into this thing. Now I'm going to say, I'm in this mode where I'm like, I just want this to be over, and I want to move on to the next thing. So if there's anything that I would consider myself nervous, that's probably it.
Okay.
As we're going into a big event, and I just want it to be over. I want to nail it, and I want it to be done. Instead of sitting back and going, oh, this is awesome. Look at this is great. Let me be in the moment.
Got it.
None of that.
I guess you're 55 now. Like you still seem to have the same enthusiasm for it. It's hard to imagine UFC without Dana White, just because of the path that that we've been talking about. But do you ever envision what that could be like?
Well, thank you. But no, I don't even. That doesn't even cross my mind now. And the UFC is a sport and a franchise and a business that will go on long after I'm gone. It'll just be different, The way that this company was built and how it's run right now are by my philosophies of what I think about fighting, what I think about matchmaking, and many other things. And then there will be somebody else here who will have other philosophies and ideas, and it will just be different. But the UFC will go on forever. One of the hardest things in life when you're young is figuring out who you are and what you want to do forever. And where I'm lucky is I always knew what it was. I always knew what I wanted to do. And then I just laid out the roadmap on how to get there. And everything just sort of falls in place. When you hear people talk about manifesting, I mean, that's pretty much what manifesting is. It's never too late. You're never too young. You're never too old to get up the next day and decide, this is who I am going to be, and this is what I'm going to do. And then you get up every day grinding until it happens. And I still do that to myself. I have a quote on the wall in there by Bruce Lee that talks about pushing yourself to limits that if it kills you, it kills you. Even now, I'm 55, and every part of my life, I try to figure out how I can be better tomorrow than I am today. With my personal life, with my health, with my business, with my employees. How do we get better every day? So that's sort of my mindset, even now at 55.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.